Hello and welcome to the ISJ Leaders in Security podcast. My name is James Thorpe. I'm the editor of International Security Journal. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Artem and Sherman, Division Head of Security and Investigations at Resolver, and Tim Wenzel, Associate Managing Director, ESRM at Kroll. Artem has an 18-year background in security, 12 of which he spent at TJX Canada, where he headed up technology, analytics, and centralised investigations. In his current role, Artem is focused on providing security leaders with incident investigations and threat solutions. Tim is a leader in the enterprise security risk management practice. He leverages more than 20 years of security risk management and protected strategy experience in assisting Fortune companies, ultra-high net worth families, and government agencies with organisational design. Artem, Tim, it's great to be speaking with you today. Apologies for the long introduction, but how are you both?
Doing great. Yeah, doing great. Cool. Thanks for having us.
No, my absolute pleasure. And I'm really looking forward to today's discussion because a lot of the points we've mapped out in advance actually is look at the side of looking beyond the buzzword and looking beyond the idea of AI just being a buzzword and really looking at its real world applications and the fantastic work you are doing actually as well. So in kind of on that point really and the concept of buzzwords, I think, Tim, I want to come to you first really. When we look at how these technologies are actually integrating into daily operations, can you give us a bit of an insight, please?
Yeah, so I think you did a really good job putting together this podcast because Artem is super intelligent and I'm just the other guy, right? So like he's going to really help you understand what's going on with AI, but I'm going to help the average security practitioner kind of understand how AI may impact them and also what they need to be doing on their end to prepare for AI. So how can AI impact? Well, I think we need to start with AI is not magic. It is teaching programs, machines to learn about the things that we want them to do. So one of the biggest misconceptions with AI is AI can just figure it out. Well, garbage in, garbage out in the big way, right, Artem?
That's right.
So one of the biggest things that we're going to see in the security industry is that as we embrace AI, as we infuse it into technology, as we infuse it into incident management programs, understanding the metrics, understanding what's going on, if we as security practitioners have not really defined how we manage risk, how we govern our security organizations, how we fit into the governance of the organization that we're serving, we are not going to get a lot of really good assistance from AI. In fact, it's just going to make things more of a mess. If we ourselves don't understand what this type of security incident means to the company, or this type of risk or threat actually means to the bottom line of the company that we serve, then how are we going to have AI identify accurately the trends that are going on and pull out the insights that we're looking for quickly so that we can tell the business what's going on and what our next move should be? So I think it's twofold. One, AI is going to be involved in everything. And as long as we have a good understanding of how things impact our security programs and the businesses we serve, we're going to be able to use it very, very well. But the security organizations that continue to not understand those impacts very well are going to be increasingly frustrated. Artem, do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think you made a good point about the need for human expertise and creativity and contribution to be key. And that's a general theme with AI overall, where in a generic sense, it certainly is useful in automating a lot of the repetitive standards things that people don't want to do. But when it comes to the nuance of your specific organization, your specific domain, and your specific practice, that's where AI will work with people hand in hand by giving them back some of that time for those elements.
I think the human element's obviously really important. I think people see it, like you mentioned at the start, Tim, as kind of some big dominant force which is entering in a negative way. And obviously it's not in terms of an application, it's certainly not anything like that. So Artem, on your point there, I want to kind of talk about real world examples on how AI and automation technologies are being utilized. Can you share some of those with us, please?
Yeah, I think overall a very common strength of AI is processing, and generally just computers and the power that they can bring in processing data is processing vast amounts of information in a way that people just can't consume or analyze well. So when it comes to things like data analytics, we see AI be fairly prevalent in structuring data, in being able to highlight exceptions, unusual patterns in data, and being able to summarize trends within that data. Specifically within security, we've seen AI play a role for quite a while. So video analytics is a very common example. Reviewing video for people is difficult, right? You can watch it at 2, 3, maybe 10 times speed at best, any one camera feed. Whereas the power of AI could process all feeds simultaneously at the same time. And we've trained it over time to do the things that save us a lot of effort in running investigations, right? So today there's video analytics systems that you could search for people by description, where you could articulate what they're wearing and what they look like, and it'll just sift through terabytes of video and hours and hundreds of cameras and give you that result. So that's an example of AI automating a lot of the mundane or a lot of the difficult for people. The investigator's still in the picture. And of course, we have examples of behavior detection, gait detection, for things like in hostile environments, people carrying explosives, for example, and being able to analyze and understand and warn the gate security team of that approaching. Gun detection is very common as well. It's being utilized in public spaces, malls, stadiums, etc., such that we can immediately pinpoint when a person produces a weapon in a crowded space and react more quickly. We also see things like automated threat detection. So that's kind of the large data exception reporting, where we're sifting through social media, online activity, and these tools highlight the things that the investigative team should pay attention to and further investigate. And then in the administrative space of helping you do the work, being your co-investigator, so to speak, we see some of that automation in the investigative process in help with summarizing, assembling case files, cross-referencing evidence, and finding the connections within your data and drafting preliminary reports that you could then have that 80%, 70% starting point and continue. Speeding up things like transcriptions, ingesting information. So if you've done an audio interview, for example, we see things like that in Zoom and other online meeting platforms where here's the meeting summary, here's what Artem said and Tim said, and that's outputted in text that's easy to use and put into a report. So the natural language processing capabilities are certainly being utilized in all spaces that have these administrative needs, including security. And overall, AI is a form of automation. So it's not always the solution, right? AI is not the ointment for every injury. And we see the automation capabilities that support security teams not always rely on AI, right? So things like making sure that your SOPs are applied throughout the execution of an investigation or in response to an incident through automated playbooks. It's highly automated, highly efficient, ensures that if X happens, then you have a checklist of, did I do A, B, C, D? And it ensures that you execute consistently, avoid liability from not responding to incidents correctly, execute your duty of care, and deliver a high level of service. And things like that will continue to be augmented by AI. So an example where AI could help with more traditional automation approaches is, what if you could just upload your policy and it builds out a checklist or SOP to execute within your tools and within your technology. So AI continues to play a role there as well in just removing the admin, making things faster, allowing you more time to do the work.
I think the idea of working faster is obviously a really key point, an area of kind of difference, which I think is something really important to highlight. I think people have a perception sometimes that when you're looking to integrate such new technologies or add some sort of tools to your processes, that you're being, we talk about the human expertise element, you're taking the human out of it. And it's not a case. It's as simple as things like simplifying admin for people really actually goes a long way in being more efficient at the bigger picture jobs. Tim, have you got anything you want to add to that?
No, I think Artem made some really good points, and I could probably sum it up in saying that AI can really make far more efficient of good processes. So if your processes are not great, they're incomplete, they're not logical, AI is not going to do a lot of good work for you.
Yeah. And I think that ties in quite nicely with, we're looking at this idea of also kind of deploying this technology. And, whether it would, maybe 20 years ago or today, obviously there's been new technologies constantly innovating this industry, but it doesn't change when you talk about if you've got bad processes or a bad approach to new technology, that's not going to help you overcome any hurdles. And with that in mind, what are, maybe back to you here, Artem, what are some of the hurdles you do see organizations face when they're looking to implement new technologies? And what would be some just best practice advice for them when they're looking to overcome them, and maybe a starting point?
Yeah, so there are several. One fundamental one is just change management, right? There's two things people hate is when things change and when things stay the same. So generally that is due to fear of new technology, fear of job displacement, and a learning curve of adopting new technology, new tools, and new processes that relate to that. There's also issues with integration, right? So we've talked about, of course, having the good fundamentals, but also the garbage in, garbage out problem, and understanding the specific nuances of the application and organization. That requires integrating data and infrastructure. And a lot of organizations have a variety of tools and data in different systems that might not be as modern and might not be compatible with some of the newer tools and AI technologies that they would like to utilize. So there's that gap in being able to connect and integrate with your existing technology and data. And overall, all organizations suffer from data silos, right? So this department, your marketing department might have two different databases in which they keep relevant information. Your security department might have some things in a filing cabinet, some things in one system in one geography, another system in another geography, your operations, finance, etc. So the data silo and integration components are technical hurdles, and then you have the adoption, so the change management with the fears and just overall change always being a challenge. And the way to address some of that is, like with any good change management, involve the people up front, share the vision, share the plan, have them contribute into being part of the plan, coming up with what that solution will do, get them to see how it will make their lives easier, allow them to have more impact, simplify, and sometimes eliminate what I've started calling bad admin in their day-to-day. Right? We all have our primary role in which we want to make the impact, and then the reality is there's a bunch of admin we have to do every day, and absolutely nobody likes that. So once people understand that is the true benefit of, I have to do less admin, right? I don't have to do expense reports anymore as a simple non-security example, right? I don't have to review all these reports. I don't have to summarize for my exec every week what's been going on, because I could do that with a click of a button, and I could focus on actually doing the work and making the impact. So involving the teams up front, having them be part of the solution, part of the ideation, and part of the process is key to good change management overall, and with implementing AI as well. Of course, good training, putting any new systems and technology in, you have to think of that ahead of time. Lean on the vendors that are also selling and building these tools, right? They've implemented this with, dozens, hundreds, thousands of customers. So you don't need to come up with it all by yourself. They've seen what good looks like. They've seen customers adopting it really well. They've seen it succeed and have that real impact. So organizations shouldn't worry about having to solve all these problems on their own. The vendors that build the solutions have all of these examples from the domain, and make sure that you measure the success of these things and reflect and iterate. All too often, organizations will decide that they need to do something new, decide to implement a new tool, go live, and consider themselves done. But actually implementing the technology is truly just the beginning. You have to check, iterate, adapt, and ensure that it is making the impact that you expect. And if it's not, calibrate and continue working towards achieving those metrics.
That's really interesting. And obviously, like you say, just someone snapping their fingers and saying we're just going to deploy something without kind of doing the due diligence and training first is obviously, a recipe for disaster, really. And I think, Tim, that's where I want to come to you actually when we're looking at the idea of, whether it's kind of your man on the street or someone with a lot of technical experience. When you look at the idea of avoiding disruption when looking to integrate these technologies, have you kind of got some top tips which we should recommend?
Yeah. So in the security industry, we're really bad at budgeting standalone projects. And so we're like, hey, this year we're going to do X and we're going to spend this much money. Hey, if you're actually going to be implementing an AI solution to take over a process, or maybe even take over things that normally would have been 5 or 6 jobs, instead you'll have 1 or 2 people overseeing this AI process, then we need to step back from the RFP model of saying, hey, we're going to buy a thing, it's going to be implemented and done, because this is an iterative process. So in the technology sector, we have design-based thinking. We look at our customer, we look at what's actually going to happen. And then specifically with things that automate, you need to look at the big picture. So this is what I want to end up with, and then break it down to very small chunks. And then people will also make the mistake of saying, oh, well, if we're going to break it down to small chunks and then train AI to do it, I want to start with the things that are hardest to do because they're difficult for us. And if AI can figure this out, great. Well, you're teaching it. So if you're having trouble figuring it out, AI is not going to figure it out for you, right? So there's a logical flaw there. So what you need to do is look at the processes, the whole project that you want, realize it's probably going to take a couple years to do it well. And you're going to start with the most basic, most easily understood parts, right? So like Artem said, admin, things that are highly repeatable, things that are pretty rules based. And also, if you're looking at your big picture of the program that you want AI to really help with, what are the foundational elements that it has to get right on a basic level so that it can function properly at an advanced level? So we think about maybe looking at protective intelligence. So protective intelligence is intelligence on a specific protected person, a specific protected event, right? So we're looking for any threats or any new risks to this person or this event. Well, what is the most basic thing to start with? What do we think are risks that we're caring about? What are risks that we're not caring about? How reliably can it segregate out and push to you? You should look at these. Don't really look at these. That's something that can be pretty simple. The people that are already working that job can say, oh, yep, you're right, but this is wrong. Why was that wrong? New rules to help the AI understand. And then as you build from very, very simple over time, you can end up with incredible systems where AI does very, very good work in very, very difficult circumstances. But if you don't start with the simple and get that going really, really well, you're never going to get the advanced results. So that's another expectation you can set with your stakeholders. This is going to take time. It's going to be iterative. It's going to feel like we're given it easy work to do. But as Artem shared, that's going to free your teams up quicker because the bulk of the time is spent on the easy stuff, right? To do the hard things. And then they're going to understand that better. They're going to work to define it better. And then those people can put better information into the AI, making it a faster, more efficient process. And so I think that backwards mindset that we have in the security industry on the hypothesis that AI is magic, it's not. So start simple, start small, and build at a regular, repetitive cadence. And if you understand that and you can set those expectations organizationally and you can budget for that, you're going to get far better results than the project-based, we're going to get this done in this year.
Yeah. And obviously, we mentioned the idea of kind of getting the small things right and the tedious parts, so incident triage is one area I want to come to quickly and when it comes to security workflows. And Artem, I know you've got some insights you want to share with us on this. When it comes to kind of the room for AI to take on such a repetitive task, what immediate benefits does this bring to investigators and teams in general?
Yeah, that's a very important area and something that Resolver is very focused on. So security teams deal with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of incidents that come in through a variety of areas. So, that might be email, might be people submitting forms, reporting things across. So they deal with a lot of incidents. And a key element in the incident management process is you've received a report from a member of the public, an employee, a student, a patient, a person outside of security who isn't aware of the information that you need, how you need it structured. They don't care about that. That's not their concern. So they've told you that something has happened, and there comes the key work of somebody in security has to figure that out. What is this? How important is it? What are the elements? What type of incident is it? Who's involved? Where does this need to go? And how quickly and how seriously should we treat this? And that is something that is a fundamental strength of AI, is that it could easily process information like that. It could easily classify and analyze the text data, audio data, whatever that may be, and take that process from minutes or sometimes days and weeks, right? If you have a queue of incidents that you need to triage and you have limited resources, which all security teams do, that's something that somebody has to do. It's not necessarily a job, right? So in security, there is no incident triager as a job. It's just a role that somebody has to execute. Whoever is on shift at the SOC, or whoever happens to be working on your analyst team, however you're structured, it's additional work that somebody has to do. They might be otherwise focused. They might not get to it. So AI could take that, understand what is this, how severe, how important, who's involved, search your systems in connecting all of the dots, and knowing, a suspect was mentioned that you've dealt with before, and they have a history of violence. Now this is a higher priority incident, and I will send this to this team with that high priority and send notifications. Something a person would exactly do, but what if they don't get to it? And what if it's number 100 or 1,000 in the queue of incidents that they need to process? So AI excels in these things. That's what I refer to when I say bad admin. It's something that is important. We must do it, but people wish they didn't have to. And the ability to take that from minutes or a delay of days or weeks to zero and ensure that immediate processing can accelerate your team's response, can ensure that high priority things are treated that way with urgency and priority and without delay. And it could do that an infinite amount of times. It never gets tired. It never gets distracted. That is, in our mind, an excellent application of AI capabilities.
And along those lines, Artem, I mean, you can actually start to deliver a superior customer experience. So you have that layperson in the company. They're not a security person. They're reporting something. And so maybe they call and leave a voicemail. Okay. And so AI is listening. Maybe they send an email. So AI is reading. Maybe they're messaging in on a proprietary, messaging app that goes to security, or it's a hotline, any of these things. And if you're training really good processes, then the AI can say, oh, checking these boxes. I have this information, this information, this information. Oh, we have a person that may match this thing. So we would need to know this next. Chatbot goes back, sends an email, sends a chat back. Hey, did you notice this? Did you notice that? Can you help us understand this? So that person reports once instead of you calling them back once or twice, a half a week, 2 weeks later. And it gets a full report distilled into the format that you need for somebody to review. And that is a really good, if you have a really good process that is self-contained and efficient, that can easily happen.
That's really interesting. And obviously, one of the elements you mentioned there is also kind of customers in this. And when we tie that into the security aspect and we look at the broader organization and business, how useful are these tools to also, help security leaders demonstrate their value to the overall operation and mission?
I mean, so it depends. It depends on where you're at, right? So not all industries that security departments serve are going to be open to or impressed with AI, right? So if you're serving local manufacturing facilities that aren't very high tech, they may not care. They may not want to invest in it. And this whiz-bang technology may not be super cool to them, right? But if you take that same manufacturing, but it's over a region or over an entire country or over the globe, that's a lot of data that you have coming in, right? And so the interesting thing is AI can organize this data. So, one of the things that we might see is intelligence teams or investigations teams, instead of having all intel people or all investigators, they might hire a data scientist or two, right? To actually see how this information at a broad scale is organized to help maintain this. And again, the most impressive results are going to be from the organizations that intimately understand the work that they're doing and how it impacts the organization. You can make a super cool tool that does really interesting things for security, but if they're meaningless to the organization, you're not going to get a lot of buy-in, right? You're not going to get a lot of accolades. So how does what we do in security meet the needs and enable the organization? It's a key question that you need to answer very clearly. I mean, it's the basis of a value proposition, and AI can support a strong value proposition if you have it.
That's really interesting. And one of the elements there as well is also kind of this idea of striking a balance. And again, we kind of go back to this idea of human expertise. And obviously it's so necessary in case investigations. But Tim, just a point for you to jump on again. When it comes to kind of automating workflows, how important is it to strike that balance between the kind of human aspect with the technology too?
I mean, it's huge because at the end of the day, a human's going to be looking at what AI is turning out to see if it's good or it's not. So that human has to know what is exceptional quality, what is okay, and what is not good quality at all. And as a consultant, being in this industry for a long time, you see a lot of people who have not had to be super thoughtful about the quality of what's going on in front of them within their security program. Why is that? Am I saying that, people in this industry aren't thoughtful, aren't smart? No. But most all of us come from government or public service of some sort. And the reason we do the things that we've always done is because they're a function of law. They're written in law. This is what you're going to do. And you're always going to do this, and you're going to have this type of similar structure. That doesn't transition natively to the private sector, right? Because businesses have to drive value. They have to create revenue. They have to establish their place in the market. And so really understanding what about my experience is useful, but how can I change it to not function as in a lawful framework, but to function in a value proposition is a huge switch. And that's one of the things that our customers are probably, one of the value that they get from our consultation is really helping them understand what matters to their organization and what provides value and enables their organization to stay ahead of the market, to ship their products on time, to grab up market share in the next half. Security departments don't think that way. How do I enable this market strategy? But we need to be. And it's not that difficult. It really is about having conversations, having coffee with the people you're providing services for, and asking the simple question, how have we enabled you to do your job? People are afraid to ask that question because they're afraid they're going to hear, well, you're actually getting in the way. Not super helpful, right? But lean into that, because here's the thing. If the business unit has to work with you, they want you to be helpful. They want you to be an enabler. And so, okay, how can we become more helpful? One of the things that I like to train my customers to do as quality assurance is just saying, look, we're doing a review, a quality review of all of our processes and all of the delivery that we do across the business. So I just want to have a very open conversation about how well you're experiencing us, when things have been really good, when things are not good, and how we can do better. You can do that every month for a year with a business unit, and you can be providing in a year superior products and services to them just based on having open, honest conversation and sharpening this up. So think about this across the organization. And that when you start to introduce technology and to automate processes, that will ensure that you have the best, most relevant processes. And especially once you invest in AI, remember, this doesn't stop. Every year, almost every business changes directions. Some business change directions on a quarterly basis, depending on how agile and relevant these companies are in what's going on in society, right? And so you need to measure that, and you need to be training this AI at that same pace to the evolving business landscape so that you're understanding the relevant threats and risks to what's going on right now. And that's another place where we fall flat. We get to a good place and we're like, whew, okay, hold the ground, boys, or nobody takes this hill. We own this hill. But the business is already leaving the hill. So we need to march with the business. And that comes from relationships. Most of the time, AI is not going to see that for you. That's the people that are overseeing it. We have to keep up with the business, and we have to keep aiming the technology in the right direction. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think that the human aspect there is really interesting, and the communication part as well. Like you say, it's all about relationships, businesses in general. And when we're looking at this at a large enterprise level, say an application, it's got people, it's got stakeholders, you've got different departments like you touched on earlier, Artem, and people need to have, a vision in mind and all work and kind of be singing off the same hymn sheet, so to speak. And that's something I just want to kind of focus in on for a final point really is, for people who are kind of maybe a bit hesitant still, Artem, how can teams ensure that when these technologies are adopted, that it also remains consistent and accurate without also making new complexities as well? Because I'm sure there are people who are concerned about that, but I think it's really important to kind of focus in on why they shouldn't be as well.
Certainly. So I think it comes down to governance and monitoring and transparency within that. You want to make sure that you are clear on what AI technology you're using, what it's going to accomplish and how it works, as well as your strategic outcomes that you seek. So you have to be upfront, I would say overly transparent about that, and allow people to understand first your motives and the strategic outcomes, how you're going to apply this technology, what it's capable of, what it does, what it's routinely utilized for. So that clarity is very important on how those decisions are made. You want to make sure that there's the ability to audit the outcomes and the work that happens. So it could be as simple as, if you're summarizing a case report, you should be able to see what it's summarized from and be able to audit the output. If you're automating the triage process, the investigator should be able to see the original conversation, the original submission, the transcript, the audio recording, and then how the AI automation technology, whatever, structured it. So the inputs and outputs need to be auditable by everybody. And over time, you build trust. You can calibrate and adjust and make corrections as well, right? So if you see, well, it missed the critical detail, I could just fix that. And then I'm not so worried. If all I see is the result of it, I have no idea what was missed. And throughout the investigation, I might later find out a month later that the victim actually reported something that was excluded and was critical. We don't want that. So upfront, you need to be hyper transparent until that trust is built up, until the technology gets to a point where the accuracy is such that maybe it's not as necessary. But I don't see an issue with transparency. And in how you apply AI, you should always have the thresholds and the box in which it operates, right? So there should always be scenarios where human oversight remains in place. And that could be volume, that could be criticality, that could be the type of thing. You should always have these exception and threshold processes and ensure that critical decisions are always made by people. So again, it could help you get 80% there, but we are submitting that final report to the prosecutor. You own that, right? You can't point a finger and say, oh, well, this AI thing made an error and I submitted it. Now somebody's on trial and I'm testifying in court to that. You're responsible for it at the end of the day. If you're making a significant policy change, implementing a new security control, it's you who's responsible for those outcomes. You can never point the finger at automation. Mm-hmm. So you always have to make sure there's that human oversight and that critical decisions are made by the leadership and by the people that are doing the work. There should always be that oversight capability. And in that, I'll say this again, but the vendors you're working with, the companies that have built this technology and are selling it to you, work with them on best practices, right? Again, they've seen what good looks like. They've implemented this across hundreds, thousands of other use cases and customers. So while you need a governance model, again, you don't need to invent it. You don't need to come up with it all on your own. Of course, you want to protect the interests of your organization, but ask the vendors to help you. Ask them what best practices are. Ask them what governance models they see customers implement. Ask them, how can I trust your technology? How can I make sure that my people trust and adopt your technology?
And Artem, what you've been talking about is really the foundations of a quality assurance program. Mm-hmm. And so interacting properly with the training of AI does lend itself, if you document it correctly, to a fantastic quality assurance program. One thing I want to call out, Artem said, if you see that it missed a key detail and you're like, oh, I'll just add that, you lose an opportunity to understand how it missed that, right? So as you work with AI, your people are going to, at some point, become fatigued with, oh, I have to go through this process to make sure we train the AI. I can just fix this. But when you start shortcutting because it's faster, you're still training your AI that it's doing the right thing when it's missing things. And so that's a strategy, a people strategy that you're going to have to come up with to make sure that the AI is constantly having positive and correct reinforcement, and you're documenting what you've done for that transparency, for that quality assurance program. And if you do it well, your AI can produce the QBR, the quality, quarterly quality reports with transparency. Here's all the things we did, critical decisions we made. Tap it. Here's all of the context and criteria that came into making that decision. Here's where it came from. That can be easily well organized and automated. But you have to have that consistent human interaction and that dedication to the process, which it can feel burdensome after a while. And that's probably one of the biggest perks to AI is the AI doesn't get tired of following a process or learning. It's just the human overlord that do, and they screw it up.
You know what? I think that's a really interesting note to end on, and I think it wraps our discussion up quite nicely today. So I want to thank you both for your, taking the time to share your insights with me. I really appreciate that, and to everyone listening, I really encourage you to find out more about the work Resolver and Kroll are doing, and to also have these conversations because, like you say, communication is so critical in all this. So yeah, thanks for your time, guys, and thanks once again for listening, everyone.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having us.